My name is Liam, and I was 32 years old when my world turned into a nightmare. I lived in Seabrook, a small coastal town where the air always tasted of salt and the rhythm of the waves dictated everything. My family had been boat builders for generations, and I carried on that legacy with pride. My hands knew the grain of every wood, the scent of fresh varnish, the precise curve of a hull. My workshop, inherited from my grandfather, stood right on the edge of the harbor, smelling of sawdust and tar, a place of quiet creation. I wasn't rich, not by a long shot, but I was content. I built sturdy fishing vessels, elegant pleasure craft, and I knew every knot, every timber, every secret of the sea. It was an honest life, a good life, and I loved it more than anything. I had a reputation for quality, for integrity, and that meant everything to me. My customers trusted me, and in a town like Seabrook, trust was currency. I thought I knew who I was, where I belonged, and that nothing could shake the solid ground beneath my feet. Then Marcus came back into my life, smooth as polished glass, charismatic as a rogue wave. We'd been friends since we were boys, though he'd always been the ambitious one, the dreamer who wanted more than Seabrook could offer. He'd left years ago for the city, made some money, or so he claimed, and now he was back with grand ideas. He saw my talent, he said, saw the potential that I was wasting on small projects. He proposed a massive venture, a fleet of luxury yachts commissioned by wealthy clients he supposedly knew. He painted a picture of success so vivid, so dazzling, it was hard to resist. He needed my expertise, my workshop, my name, and he needed my investment, a substantial sum to secure the initial materials, to lease a larger space, to kickstart this empire. He convinced me to sell off a parcel of family land, to drain my life savings, to take out every loan I possibly could against my workshop, against my very future. He swore on everything he held dear, on our shared history, that this was our chance, our fortune, and I believed him. I trusted Marcus implicitly, like a brother. He was the only one I ever let get close enough to see the vulnerable part of me, the part that dared to dream bigger, even if I preferred quiet certainty. He was my nemesis, though I didn't know it then, wrapped in the guise of my oldest friend. I worked tirelessly, pouring every waking hour, every ounce of my skill and hope into that project. Marcus handled the finances, the client liaison, the big picture stuff. I just built, crafting hulls that shimmered with promise, laying decks that felt like solid ground. But then the calls from the bank started. Payments weren't being made. Material suppliers were demanding money. Marcus became harder to reach. His excuses grew thinner, his phone calls shorter. One morning, I walked into my workshop, the large new space he'd leased, and found it empty. No tools, no materials, no signs of life, just a notice of eviction. The luxury yacht contracts, the clients, the entire grand scheme, it was all a phantom, a story spun from smoke. Marcus had vanished, taking every penny, leaving me buried under mountains of debt, my reputation in tatters, my workshop seized by the bank, my ancestral home facing foreclosure. I was bankrupt, humiliated, and utterly alone. The sea, once my solace, now mocked me with its vast indifference. The problem wasn't just money anymore, it was my very existence, stolen by the man I called my friend. I felt a cold, deep emptiness, a hollow ache where my soul used to be. I tried to solve it, of course. I went to the police, my voice hoarse, my hands shaking as I explained. They listened with weary eyes, took notes, but offered little hope. "Civil matter, Liam," they said, and he covered his tracks well. "There's no paper trail linking him directly to the fraud you describe." I consulted lawyers, but their fees were astronomical, and they echoed the police. "He's a ghost, Mr. Miller. We can try, but it will cost you everything you have left, and success is far from guaranteed." Everything I had left was nothing. I took any odd job I could find. I scrubbed fishing boats, mended nets, cleaned shops, anything to scrape together enough to eat to avoid sleeping on the docks. But it was never enough. The bank letters piled up. My old truck was repossessed. I watched them board up my grandfather's workshop, a piece of my soul ripped away. I lost my home, forced to rent a cheap, damp room above a tavern, the constant smell of stale beer a bitter contrast to the clean scent of my former life. The rage simmered beneath the surface, a hot, venomous thing, always threatening to boil over. I started looking for Marcus myself. Every spare moment, every spare cent, went into chasing rumors, following whispers. I spent hours at the public library, poring over old newspapers, searching online databases, anything that might give me a clue. I learned that Marcus had a history, a pattern. Seabrook wasn't his first mark. There were others, small businesses, trusting individuals, all left ruined in his wake. My humiliation deepened. I was just another victim in his long list of conquests. My hands, once precise and strong, now trembled with fury. My face grew hollow, my eyes constantly bloodshot from lack of sleep, from the endless, fruitless hunt. I stopped eating properly, my body a skeletal frame for the all-consuming hatred that gnawed at me. The sea, which once brought me peace, now whispered his name, a mocking lullaby. I had nightmares, vivid, horrifying dreams where Marcus's face, his smooth, smiling face, floated just out of reach, laughing as I drowned in endless debt. I was so low, so utterly broken, that I found myself standing on the old lighthouse cliff, the wind whipping around me, the dark water crashing far below. The thought of simply ending it all, of letting the waves take me, was seductive. But then his face, his smug, triumphant face, flashed in my mind, and a different kind of cold certainty settled over me. No, he wouldn't get away with it, not like this. I wouldn't be just another statistic in his tale of deceit. My despair hardened into a terrible resolve. I would find Marcus, and when I did, I would make him understand what he had done. Not with a quick death, no, that would be too kind. I needed to build something for him, something that would echo the despair he had inflicted upon me, something that would make him truly feel the chilling silence of betrayal. Months turned into a year. My search, fueled by nothing but an all-consuming need for vengeance, finally bore fruit. A chance encounter with an old acquaintance of Marcus's, a disgruntled former employee he'd swindled in a smaller scheme, gave me the lead I needed. Marcus was not only alive but thriving, living a life of obscene luxury in a sprawling, secluded villa nestled in the cliffs of a faraway, exclusive coastal town called Port Meridian. He was still calling himself Marcus Vance, his new life financed by the ruins of mine and countless others. I looked at the photos the acquaintance showed me. Marcus, tanned and grinning, surrounded by expensive cars, beautiful women, a shimmering infinity pool overlooking a sapphire ocean. My blood ran cold, then boiled with a fury so intense it made me dizzy. I spent every last stolen cent, worked every backbreaking shift, saving for a one-way bus ticket. I arrived in Port Meridian a shadow of my former self, gaunt, clad in worn clothes, my eyes burning with an unholy light. I staked out his villa for weeks, observing his routines, studying the security, mapping the property. He was arrogant, careless in his newfound wealth, never looking over his shoulder. He thought he was untouchable. He was wrong. I finally made my move on a moonless night, the ocean a roaring black expanse below his clifftop mansion. I slipped through the perimeter, a ghost fueled by resentment. I found Marcus alone, in his private study, sipping expensive brandy, admiring a hideous, gaudy painting. He looked up startled as I stepped out of the shadows. His face, once so familiar, contorted in confusion, then fear, then a flicker of recognition. "Liam," he stammered, his voice losing its usual smoothness. "What in God's name?" I didn't say a word. Words were too cheap for what I had planned. My hands, once deft at shaping wood, were now precise instruments of dread. I subdued him quickly, efficiently, my long months of planning making every movement instinctive. I dragged him through the sprawling mansion, past his expensive trinkets, his symbols of false success. He struggled, pleaded, offered me money, offered to make things right. I just kept moving, a silent, relentless force. I led him down to a hidden cove below his villa, a place only accessible by a narrow, winding path that few knew existed. There, bobbing gently in the dark water, was my final masterpiece. It wasn't a yacht or a fishing vessel. It was a coffin. I had spent weeks building it, scavenged materials from old shipwrecks, discarded lumber, shaping it with a horrifying inverse of the love I once put into my boats. It was long, narrow, just wide enough for a man to lie in, sealed with heavy, intricate locks I had custom forged. It was weighted with concrete, designed to sink slowly, inexorably, into the deepest trench offshore that I knew from my years on the sea. The wood was dark, unvarnished, resembling nothing so much as a crude, waterlogged tomb. Marcus's eyes, wide with terror, finally understood. "No, Liam, please," he choked, sweat pouring down his face, the arrogance completely gone, replaced by pure animalistic fear. "Don't do this, I'll give you everything." I looked at him, truly looked at him, his face distorted, ugly in his terror. "You gave me nothing, Marcus," I finally rasped, my voice rough from disuse, from the cold hate that filled me. "You took everything, and now you'll feel what it's like to lose everything you ever thought you had." I forced him into the wooden box, his struggles pathetic against my single-minded determination. He screamed, his voice echoing off the cliff walls, a sound of pure despair. I sealed the lid, the heavy locks clicking into place with a sickening finality. The sound was swallowed by the roar of the ocean. I then dragged the weighted coffin boat out into the open water, guiding it towards the dark maw of the deep. I watched it sink, slowly at first, then faster, the bubbles rising to the surface like the last gasps of a dying man. The last thing I saw was the dark wood disappearing into the blackness, taking Marcus Vance and a piece of my own soul with it. The ocean, once my betrayer, had become my accomplice. I walked away from Port Meridian, a ghost returning to a ghost town. I never went back to Seabrook. My old life was gone, shattered beyond repair. The debt was still there, a constant shadow, but the fire of revenge had burned it away, leaving only a cold, empty ash. I drifted, taking odd jobs in forgotten coastal towns, a solitary figure haunted by the rhythmic crash of waves. I found myself drawn to the wreckage of things, to driftwood, to old, discarded buoys. My hands, still craving the touch of wood, began to carve again. Not boats, never boats. Instead, I crafted strange, disturbing sculptures. Figures with tormented faces, their mouths open in silent screams. Twisted, gnarled shapes that resembled skeletal hands reaching from unseen depths. Coffins, sometimes small, intricate ones, adorned with barnacles and dried seaweed, left on remote beaches for the tide to claim. I never felt peace. The satisfaction of vengeance was a fleeting, bitter taste. It didn't bring back my workshop, my home, my peace of mind. It just replaced the burning rage with a chilling emptiness. I often found myself staring out at the endless expanse of the ocean, listening. Sometimes, when the wind howled just right, I could almost hear faint whispers carried on the salt spray, a phantom echo of a scream, or maybe just the sigh of the restless sea. And sometimes, in the dead of night, I would find a strange piece of flotsam washed ashore near my solitary shack, a piece of dark, waterlogged wood, perfectly carved into the shape of a single, sightless eye. A reminder, perhaps, that some secrets the ocean holds, it eventually returns, piece by piece, to haunt those who dared to make it their grave. The ocean was still Liam's world, but now it was his prison too.